Okay, there we go. So, welcome to Comic Beat Insider, episode 25,
Yeah.
which like 6 months of quarantine. The weekly live stream of movies, TV, and comics. Although it's become mostly movies. I am Heidi McDonald, the editor-in-chief of The Beat, the news blog of comics culture.
And I'm Jimmy Aquino, the host and producer of the long-running comics-based podcast, Comic News Insider. We cover news, reviews, interviews, comic books, TV, film, etc. every week at comicnewsinsider.com.
And this week we're joined by two newcomers to the streaming cast. Yay! We have Kyle Pinion, who runs his own website. Also, the longtime entertainment editor for The Beat, my friend, a pal, a critic. Kyle, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hey,
yeah, finally. And also we're joined by Jeet Heer, the cultural critic, a political commentator, very well known, coming to us live from Canada.
Good to be here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm the only non-journalist of the group. Yay!
Yeah. So this week we should have a pretty lively discussion. Our subject this week is Hail Caesar by the Coen Brothers. Now, I'm sure we all love some Coen Brothers movies.
Sure, yeah.
But this one was a bit more divisive. And I know the panel has varying thoughts about this film. Jimmy just saw it for the first time. And it was, in fact, the last theatrical release by the Coen Brothers. It came out in 2016, and they haven't made a movie since then.
Was it? Oh.
Yeah, so they did the Ballad of Buster Scruggs for Netflix, but
oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. So
Joe Coen has Macbeth coming out, but who knows if it's going to be at the theater or not? Because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's kind of fitting because it is a tribute to cinematic culture. So if it does turn out to be the last movie, the Coen movie that ever plays in a theater, that's not unfitting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
you're right.
They go out on a high note. Well, so as we like to talk about how we first saw the movie and our first impressions to start out. So I saw it at a critic screening. I had seen the trailers. I couldn't wait for it. It just looked like it was right up my alley. And as I watched the movie with my then husband, we were laughing our asses off in the theater.
Sure.
But many people weren't. Like, I would say we were in the minority, and like we were just slapping our thought. We couldn't be I couldn't have found this movie any more funny. And then afterwards, I found that it was not universally beloved, but I will say what I loved about this movie is I'm just a sucker for old Hollywood films. Sure. And this is the most loving pastiche to 50s filmmaking perhaps ever put on film, and also a sly sequel to Barton Fink, another Coen Brothers classic. So yeah, I was on the Hail Caesar bandwagon from jump.
Yeah, she said, a lot of us are big Coen Brothers fans, and I'm so woefully behind, but I've seen, quite a few of the big ones, but this one I just didn't see. The trailer looked great. I remember when it came out, I'm like, oh, I should check this out. And me being a recovering musical theater actor, I'm like, oh, there's musical in there. Let me definitely be interested in that. And I saw it, so I saw it like earlier this week or late last week. And I definitely laughed out loud. I found many bits funny. But I had a couple little issues there, namely the ending and the endings, and maybe we'll get into that. But yes, I did find it very funny. And as I said, as a former actor, I'm a big fan of old Hollywood, like Heidi is. I watch a ton of old movies. I was a musical theater actor. I love those old musical theater, movies, musicals, and the grand sets and all that stuff. And those epic Roman adventures, things like that. So that was fun to see as sort of a skewering or even maybe a homage to old Hollywood.
So Kyle.
So I went to the press screening for this in 2016, and I guess this was like around February of 2016 in the pre-Trump times. So like a whole totally different world.
50 years ago.
Before times.
And so I remember being pretty nonplussed at the time. I think the movie's about 100 minutes long, and for me, it felt like it was about 3 hours long. It was a pretty cold audience too. It was mostly made up of film critics, so most of us were sitting there taking notes, trying to parse together the thematic underpinnings of the film and trying to figure out what narratives we're going to put together for our respective pieces. But I went back and looked at my review that I put on the beat, to sort of get a sense of where I even was on this film before I rewatched it here. And I will say I was actually pretty impressed with what I wrote. I was not bad.
Isn't that a good feeling?
Oh man,
Well
Kyle, I'm not so totally sure my rewatch held up to what some of my. I'm not sure what I was on about at some points, but I largely have tried to watch this twice now. I watched it on an airplane on the way back from a work meeting, which that didn't work out so well. But I did watch it again last night, and I'm looking forward to talking about it a little bit more. Maybe my opinions have softened somewhat.
So I watched it shortly after it came out in a theater, and there weren't that many people in the theater. So it's just like my partner and myself, and we both enjoyed it. But we have had that same theatrical experience. I remember once seeing Burn After Reading, where my partner and I were just like laughing throughout the whole thing. And like, you know, it was like a half-filled theater with a lot of teenagers for some reason. Maybe for Brad Pitt. And they were like everything was flying past them. So I think generally, I think it's good to sort of divide the Coen Brothers movies into, which they've done many, into two broad categories. Like, I think that they have, they know how to do crowd pleasers, and they've done movies that are just hit that mainstream broad audience like right away, like Fargo, No Country for Old Men, True Grit. And these are all movies that, you know, that rack up the prizes and get like large audiences. And there are like these other movies that they have done that are more esoteric, which require you to have either be on that Coen wavelength or have like some sort of engagement with the world that they're dealing with. Whether it's the old Hollywood of Hail Caesar, but I mean, I would mention like Inside Llewyn Davis, which I love.
Oh, that's another one of my favorites.
So I think you have to be a little bit invested in the folk culture of the early 60s and in that world. Or like A Serious Man, which I don't think you have to be Jewish to appreciate it, but you have to, in my experience, people who come from religious minorities understand that movie a bit more. Like I've noticed that people who are like sort of Sikhs or Hindus or Jewish generally glom onto the fact that this is a movie about being a religious minority in this wider American culture and the tension between that American culture and being a religious minority. And these are all, you know, Inside Llewyn Davis, Serious Man, and Hail Caesar are not movies that made a lot of money. You know, they're not, they also all tended to have a little bit divisive critical response as well. So I think there's a kind of, you know, there's popcorn Coen, you know, like broad mass audience Coen, and there's the acquired taste Coen, and Hail Caesar falls into that. But the other thing I would say about the Coens is that they belong to that category of filmmakers who are very rewatchable and who grow as you watch them. The one other figure that really comes to mind to me is Kubrick, where like, you know, Martin Scorsese has talked about how the first time he saw The Shining, he thought it's very impressive, but you know, it didn't really strike him. You know, he says, you know, he watched it again and again and again, and it grew to him to becoming one of his favorite movies. And I think that's a common experience that a lot of people have with the Coens. That like, you know, like their movies, the esoteric movies that they do are so strange and come at us things in such a lateral way. In like they're like the knight on a chess set. They move in a direction that you don't expect them to, and you have to watch them several times to like them, really. And I mean, I liked Hail Caesar the first time I saw it quite a bit. I noticed it had this divisive response. So I wrote, I watched it again and liked it even more. And I wrote about it for the Los Angeles Review of Books, arguing with some of the critics who said this is minor Coen. Because I actually think that this is actually, in some ways, their Summa Theologica. This is the Coens bringing everything that they do as filmmakers together. Because if you see it, it has all, you know, you said it's the sequel.
Yeah.
But it also has like the Western, which they did before. Yeah. It has the musical, which they've done in Oh Brother. Every previous Coen movie can be seen. It has a thriller plot of the kidnapping, as in Fargo. Every previous Coen movie is in Hail Caesar.
That's right.
Interesting.
I think
Nice.
I think one of the reasons why I loved it so much was I felt like it did kind of tie up like a lot of trilogies, like it was a parallel trilogies. Like I do see it as a trilogy with Barton Fink, which Capitol Studios is the studio in Barton Fink, and also in Hail Caesar. So it's a direct connection there. Um, and also a trilogy. So the trilogy there is, I feel Llewyn Davis, inside Llewyn Davis is the middle of the trilogy because Barton Fink is about the creative man put down. Llewyn Davis is about when the creative man is the asshole, and and Hail Caesar is about when the studio is the good guy. So and also the religious themes, as you mentioned, Jeet. I think it really ties together some of the films they did that were about spirituality and religion, and yeah, it sums up a lot of their themes.
So was this your favorite? What are you guys' favorite Coen Brothers film then?
So wait, but before everyone answers that, I call this the sugar plum game or teg noir, the ineffable game without any rules. Now, if you ever party game bar, if we ever go back to parties and bars, perfect conversation starter. Ask people what are their 3 favorite Coen brother movies. Because you'll get different answers. You'll get different answers from everybody. So,
of course.
Yeah. Kyle.
All right. My number 1 would be A Serious Man, which is, it's funny. Jeet says that it's kind of divisive because I think it's a masterpiece, probably the best thing in their entire filmography. After that, I would probably say Barton Fink is my second favorite. And I think No Country for Old Men would probably be my third.
Jimmy, what are your 3
Well,
favorites?
again, I'm woefully behind in a lot of their movies, but I would say I've always loved Raising Arizona. Raising Arizona, I saw that movie multiple times back in the day. I mean, I know it's everybody's, but Big Lebowski, come on. I don't know. I mean, and again, like you said, popular in Fargo. I really like that. So, yeah.
I would say it does kind of change depending on which one I've seen most recently, but it's hard for me not to love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because it's perfect. It's a perfect film.
That's my dad's favorite.
Yeah. I would say I love Inside Llewyn Davis also. It's one of my absolute favorites. And then as of today, I mean, Hail Caesar's up there, but I love Barton Fink so much also. So as of today, I'll say Hail Caesar because I just saw it last night. But it's always a mutable list. Jeet?
Well, yeah, no, you can't step in the same river twice, and you can't have the same Coen Brothers list twice. So this will change instantly. Maybe the stuff we haven't mentioned, because a lot of what people have mentioned before could easily be on my top 10, like No Country for Old Men and Barton Fink. But I would say what hasn't been mentioned before, Miller's Crossing, I think is just an amazing film. Inside Llewyn Davis, and A Serious Man.
And what's getting a lot of retrospective appreciation lately is like stuff like the Hudsucker Proxy. I hear a lot of people talking about that. A lot of my friends put that in their top 3 too.
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to the Macbeth film because I did that show back in my young acting days, and I'm a big Shakespeare nerd, so very interested in their take on Macbeth. So yeah, especially with Denzel. My God.
So let's talk about Kyle. Let's talk about your critical journey on this film and how you feel, because you do have some objections to it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels more like a noble misfire more than anything else. There are things that I deeply appreciate about what they're attempting to do with this film. I'm especially drawn, I think, to some of the parallels that they try to draw, which I think are really quite brave, actually, between sort of the messaging of Jesus Christ and within the film within a film, Hail Caesar, and the blacklisted screenwriters that appear sort of throughout the film. I think that they're trying to draw some interesting parallels between sort of like socialism and some of the overall messages that Christ would deliver, in the Gospels. And I think that is actually one of the things that continued to like keep me going throughout the movie. I also found that some of the underpinnings that you pointed out with Barton Fink, that is really a film that is driven by the creative energy of a writer. And it is all centered on sort of that existential journey him trying to sort of rediscover that Barton Fink feeling, and so, but on the other hand, this is like the second half of that same story where it gets beyond sort of just the creative and it deals with the actual output and all of the external factors that deal with the creation of the movie and everything that Eddie Mannix is doing to keep his stars in line and to keep the narrative going in terms of the gossip columnists and stuff. And that kind of stuff is really, really neat to me. The problem I have is that I feel like the movie takes a lot of different detours. And I feel like some of them don't work as well as others. I find myself particularly struggling with not only like the Scarlett Johansson sort of mermaid stuff. I actually, as charming as Channing Tatum is, I don't necessarily know that the No Dames dance number works fully.
You stabbed me.
I mean, it's
I loved it.
It lasts a little too long.
It didn't last long enough. It should have been a whole movie. Well, there was a whole movie. It was called Anchors Away, and on the town. But okay, sailors dancing.
And I guess like the centralized problem I have more than anything else is that as much as I think that Eddie Mannix gets a better deal here than he did in like something like Hollywoodland, where Bob Hoskins plays him basically as like a gang lord, and is probably more true to life. I think he's not like one of the most interesting protagonists they've ever put on screen. And I don't know if that's centered on just the fact that they didn't have a lot of meat for Josh Brolin to work with as a performer, but he's just kind of a dull block of wood. And, compared to some of like the dynamic protagonists, in A Serious Man or in Fargo or in any of these films that we really kind of center on as like great Coen Brothers movies. I think when you have a protagonist who sort of just drags the whole thing down, and every time he shows up, you're like, man, I wish we could go back to George Clooney and all those future guys. That's kind of where I find myself struggling the most. But I don't hate it. It's not intolerable cruelty. Okay. It's just a film that has a lot on its mind, and I just don't think it necessarily, the reach exceeds its grasp, I'll say.
Well, Jimmy,
I like the whole idea that it's set in 1951, sort of either both making fun of homage to old Hollywood with the Roman epics, the Esther Williams films, which I used to love watching. Of course, as I said, being a former musical theater performer, the musical number, I actually love that musical number because I performed Nothing Like a Dame, and I was like, the twist is brilliant. I love it that they turn into like, oh, this is actually they don't want to see dames. Great.
No need for dames.
That's awesome. That's such a great twist. And it did, being a performer, like I'm watching that, like I felt like it was a really great little number, and I thought it was a nice little touch there. The whole, I sort of laughed out loud very much. Some great characterizations. The whole commie conspiracy, which of course was the Red Scare was happening back then in Hollywood, of course. The whole, and also besides being a recovering actor, I'm a recovering Catholic as well. So the whole confessional scenes are brilliant because it's like he's doing all this nasty stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I smoked a cigarette," and it's like, "Oh, I remember those days when I would do something really bad. I'd go into the priest. I'm like, oh yeah, I did this," and they're like, "Okay, 10 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, great, awesome. I'm free, and I'll do sin again." So that I can definitely relate to. But it definitely had some serious undertones, of course, with it, like having still to this day, even hiding your sexuality in Hollywood, how it's an all white male dominated Hollywood. I think there was that one scene, maybe one of the movies, where there was like one black person in the scene, prominently seen, and that's all you see of any color, in the old studio system where the actors were basically bought and sold and controlled. Kind of like the K-pop system now. And we'll get into that another time. I'm a big fan. But I did have like a kind of issue with like Scarlett Johansson. I felt like while there were some great women characters in the movie, I did feel like Scarlett's was sort of pushed aside. Her story was bare. Like that's the ending I had problem. Like her ending was just talked about. And see, it's like, oh yeah, she did this, she married the guy, but this and that. Like, well, I want to see her talk about it and be involved in it. Tilda Swinton was great playing the twins, but it was sort of just in and out. Frances McDormand, of course, has to be in it because she's married to
Ugh,
one of them, you know.
a
And she
great
had a great
cameo. Such a great
short little
cameo.
cameo. And then I forgot the actress that played his assistant. She was great, but it was just
Oh,
like,
she was
you
amazing.
know, and
She was like before the internet, you had an assistant, right?
yeah, and I get the idea of like, okay, we're representing Hollywood. It's all white males. So there's not going to be as many women. There's going to be hardly any people of color at all. But it's still fun. There could have been more women stuff, or at least focus a little more on Scarlett Johansson's character. I was happy to see these little, like, oh my god, there's Emily Beecham in that movie with the movie. I mean, I love her, you know, and like I said, she's Frances, and would like to have seen more of her. But it just felt like, you know, I get it's Eddie Mannix's story, but I wanted more from some of those other side stories, like Kyle was saying as well. It's just like, so I just felt like the ending was too neatly wrapped up. Like I said, like Clooney gets just told, go act. Okay, great. His story's done. Great, awesome. That's how we end it. Brolin doesn't take the easy route out with the airplane deal. He just sticks to the studio. And like, what the fuck happens to Hobie? You know, it's like he helped with this case, and he's back in. Okay, no, he's back. Like,
well, Hobie went and got a spaceship called the Millennium Falcon.
Right. Well, yeah, I know that.
I know.
And they were great, and the actors.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. Alden Ehrenreich was fantastic. But I just was like, the ending I was really let down by.
Okay, interesting. See, I could not possibly be let down by an ending that suddenly turns into, Soviet propaganda and has Channing Tatum leaping onto a submarine and going off to, a Russian folk song. I mean, that again, like, I don't know. I loved, okay. We always spoil all this stuff. So,
of course.
One of the things, like, the Coen Brothers give terrible interviews, and one of the things they always say is they don't do research, which I think that might be a misstatement. So I don't know. I'd be interested in everybody else's take on this. Like, do they just research? Do they just spontaneously decide to retcon everything, or do they just they seem like such intuitive creators? So, for instance, in this movie we see Tilda Swinton playing twin gossip columnists. Obviously based on Hedda Hopper, and my God, her costumes, the clothing is
Hedda, and who her rival was.
Luella Parsons. However, it also is evocative of the idea that Ann Landers and Dear Abby were twin sisters who became the two, so it's kind of like this projection of one idea that comes in, and it just, to me, it just adds to the richness of the fabric. Now, the real Eddie Mannix was actually a real person who was a studio fixer during the 50s, and he was apparently an asshole. And as Kyle mentioned, he's in Hollywood land, but was he maybe a little more responsible for the death of George Reeve than
Superman? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think this is a kind of an important point, which is that the Coens use history, but like not in as his historical novelist or historian would do. And it's not only there was a real Eddie Mannix, but there was a real Herbert Marcuse. Who's a very famous Marxist philosopher, but was not at all like the Marcuse in the movie. I mean, like, this is a little bit of philosophical digression, but the actual Herbert Marcuse was coming out of the Frankfurt School and emphasized the importance of culture over material things. The movie is just an old line Stalinist. Like, but I think that, I'm sure that they're aware of it. Just as when Inside Llewyn Davis, there's a lot of old folkies who, like, they watch Inside Llewyn Davis and they're very mad because the actual Dave Van Rourke was not at all like Llewyn Davis. He was like, like a big, hardy guy who enjoyed life, who was like, happy and really energetic, and not this. But I think that this is an assertion of the power of art and creativity. They're telling the stories they want to tell and are using people's names, using real people, but not necessarily like with historical activity accuracy. I think the other example is Barton Fink, where there's a lot of people who like Clifford Odets and will complain till the end of the day that Clifford Odets was not like Barton Fink. Well, of course not. It's like a movie and he's called Barton Fink. And so to use like the elements of Clifford Odets' life, the sort of narrative arc of his life, but put in a different character. So I think that's very much how they approach it. And I think, like, it's, you could go either way. If you're like someone who really loves historical fidelity, you could say, well, they're not being very accurate, and you can ding them on that. I personally don't care. Like, I think that they're pretty much creating the visions that they want to create, and especially with Hail Caesar, where it's not just that they're movies within movies of these great set pieces, like the dance number, but it itself is a movie. Like, it is itself is a kind of, we're seeing the world as Eddie Mannix would like it to be seen, and the ending is a way, and the whole like at the beginning there's this noir feel as he's the long good, not the long goodbye, farewell my lovely, or no, the big sleep. The opening scene with Eddie Mannix going to find the actress is exactly taken from the big sleep.
And also LA Confidential, very much, very evocative.
Yeah, and so it's like we're not just seeing a story that is about the film world where there's movies within it, but it itself is it's how Hollywood imposes its own reality. So Eddie Mannix's story is told as a Hollywood movie. And the ending is a Hollywood ending with the leap to the submarine, but also the money disappearing and the dog barking.
The money.
The Kubrick movie, The Killing, where the gang has the money and it all like falls apart. And there's a dog that like alerts the authorities, yapping dog. So it's all there's several layers of movie making, and it's all done with the purpose of celebrating movies. In some ways, it's the happiest Coen Brothers movie because it's their homage to film. Like, this is they're often very critical, very satiric filmmakers, which I love. But in this movie, they're really like saying like, well, this is the world that we love, even despite its like, stupidity and cruelty and foolishness.
I have a question for you actually on that topic, if y'all don't mind me asking. One of the things that strikes me about the film is that Eddie seems to be offered an escape route throughout. And it almost seems like the Coen brothers are sort of romanticizing the idea of him going to go work for Lockheed, Lockheed, where they with the nuclear bomb and stuff, hydrogen bomb. And I just kind of wonder, like, I sat there trying to determine, like, do the Coen brothers actually like the industry or not? And is there a little bit of author insert there happening where they thought, oh, it might be kind of nice to escape and have like a normal life with regular hours? But I'm just not sure what y'all's read on that would be.
Well, I that's why I said earlier, I think I sort of agree where it's like, I feel like it was both making fun of, but also an homage at the same time to old Hollywood. So I think they probably were right in that middle where they're like, they probably saw it that way, perhaps. Yeah, like maybe there is a little bit of an out here, making fun of themselves in a sense, maybe.
Just as Jimmy, talks about his past as an actor. I mean, I come from a showbiz family,
That's
and
right, yeah.
my stepfather is a screenwriter and comedy writer, and so I first saw this movie actually with him, or I saw Barton Fink, pardon me, with him at a Writers Guild screening. And he's a screenwriter. So trust me that, this movie was boffo in our household. Because Barton Fink,
Nice.
just for anyone who hasn't seen it, Jimmy, it is about, as Jeet said, it based on the playwright Clifford Odets. In the 30s and 40s, all these hotshot novelists and playwrights were lured to Hollywood and then crushed by Hollywood. And, some of them like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler actually kind of suffered along and, did some good work. But others
Rod
really...
Serling.
Rod Serling, yes, came back. And Barton Fink is just, like the screenwriters, give me that Barton Fink feeling while, telling him it needs to be a Wallace Beery wrestling pick. So I actually think what's interesting, like I said, Barton Fink is the work of the younger Coen brothers when perhaps they had just gone to Hollywood and were undoubtedly being told they were quirky and non-commercial and being struggling. A part of their career, I think, that lasted until Fargo won Best Picture. As Jeet said, it was a crowd pleaser and, everybody loved Fargo. And then all of a sudden they were allowed to pretty much do whatever they want. And that's, I think that's one of the reasons why I love Llewyn Davis so much is, we see that Barton Fink is also a jerk. He's like an egotistical jerk who doesn't really, he's ill-equipped to deal with the world of Hollywood. But, in Llewyn Davis, we really see that the creator can be, like I said, a total asshole and undercut himself at every step of the way when people are trying to give him these opportunities, and he just keeps back, like undercutting his own dreams. And I think after you've been around for a while, that's a very familiar story. I'm sure we've all seen people with all the talent in the world
Mhm.
who shot themselves in the foot. And I feel like no, Jimmy, you're bigger than ever.
I could have been somebody. No.
No, you're bigger than ever. You're on Comic Beat Insider.
It's true. True.
So,
Fair.
I love that portrait in Llewyn Davis. So I think maybe I think maybe after all this time, I guess they were like in their late 50s when they made Hail Caesar, and insanely successful. I mean, look at that. We can't even name all the great movies they've made,
Yeah.
and maybe
It's partially that they're more successful now, but there's also an elegiac aspect where like they're aware that film itself could be at an end. And in some ways, I mean, I think it's an interesting question whether Tarantino was influenced in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by this, because they're both movies
mm,
that are, at this late date in history that are like the Owl of Minerva, looking back and saying, like what was film? And it's a with the Lockheed, it's not just like Lockheed makes armaments, but the guy says, film is doomed. There's television
yeah.
that's along. And after they did Hail Caesar, they did like Netflix, right? So this is the Coen Brothers, like like aware, like Hollywood has this screwy, crazy thing, and that you have to be kind of like a fixer and deal with all these crazy actors and everything. And it has these commercial imperatives that are also bad, but also you do manage to somehow create art. But it's also there's the alternatives, and there's the alternative of religion, there's the alternative of politics in the form of socialism, and there's the alternative of just like normal capitalism of joining Lockheed. And it's like Mannix. I mean, is he a boring character, or is he like? Does he have to? It depends on if you feel that the choice he makes was a real choice, like that he could have. It's someone who decides to stay in film even though film is endangered, and decides to stay in film even though he has other alternatives, and is aware of all the limits of film, but still thinks that this is his life and this is something that comes out of it. I mean, I think that's the affirmation at the end of the movie, not so much of Hollywood, but of the act of making art, and how even within a very commercial, collaborative process, art can be made. I mean, I think it's interesting, like, that Sandal epic, the Hail Caesar, the story of the Christ, it seems like, one of these silly 1950s things. But that scene with George Clooney, where he's like looking at Christ and saying and making that final speech, is very moving until he flubs the line. And so that's the kind of like the contradiction, right?
Yeah.
There's art, there's great beauty in art that comes out of this Hollywood system, but it also has like people flubbing the lines, and some of them are like Clooney idiots.
Yeah, well, it is also another. I think people have called it the Idiot trilogy, with like, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Bird After Reading, and this as Clooney playing a bumbling idiot,
Right.
and which is accurate. Let's talk about the George Clooney plot line for a little bit. So he's making this Sandal epic, which again is a chance for the Coen brothers to film, a beloved genre. And also, by the way, we have to talk at some point about my beloved Roger Deakins, the cinematographer who shot this on film to mimic the cinematography of the times. So he's filming this, and then he's kidnapped by Wayne from Seinfeld, which is so amazing. And we don't know, if he's been kidnapped by sinister forces. And it turns out that it's a house full of screenwriters. And again, the script has been flipped, unlike, that Barton Fink failing, the theater of the common man. These screenwriters are shown as kind of just flapping their lips about Marxism and Engels. The dog is named Engels, Marx's sidekick. And again, in a fascinating twist on history, famously there was the McCarthy hearings, and screenwriters were blacklisted and careers were ruined. And in this film, we learned there really was a secret cell of communists who were trying to overthrow the Hollywood system. And Clooney is at first very taken by Marxism, but then he returns to the movie set and kind of projects this feeling about economics to this film, Tale of the Christ. So yeah, let's talk about Marxism and Jesus here for a minute.
Well, I don't think there's any question there was actually actors and directors and producers interested in Marxism and socialism because when the new idea came out, you're like, well, this sounds pretty cool. I don't think it's to the extent, maybe there were a few that were to the extent that formed, maybe dangerous ideas about it. But obviously McCarthy was way overblown about it, and in the way he went after them. But yeah, I'm sure
those Soviet submarines off the coast of
yeah.
It's kind of a
so I mean, I think again you have to look at this as a film that's also about film and has a filmic narrative. This is the film that the Eddie Mannixes of the world would make. This is how he himself would have seen the communist story. There's a way in which Eddie Mannix is not just the character in the film, but this is his imagination acting out. I mean, that's exactly, I think, with the point about her. I mean, I think it's very deliberate that Mannix and Marcuse, the two real characters whose names are based on real names, are the exact opposite of what they are in real life. So we're in a funhouse world of life. We're in the film world, which is not life.
And just to kind of back that up, that this is Eddie Mannix's view of the world. I mean, the real Eddie Mannix possibly shot Superman because he was having an affair with Eddie's wife. So there was Hanky.
Supposedly that was permitted. Like Eddie was having an affair with another actress, and he permitted this affair that George was having. So when George broke up with her, I think is when we took it really badly. But
yeah, and then, of course this is all supposition, but he definitely did horrible things.
Reality was not a nice man,
right? And where
the film.
I just want to say though, in this version, his greatest sin, we see him slapping the actress in the first scene, which I'd forgotten about. I was like, oh, that does not fly. But he thinks his greatest sin is that he smoked a cigarette. So it's Eddie's view of the world. I'm sorry, Jeet, go on.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I mean, but I do think that the whole communism issue is very real for the Coens. I think one of the themes of the Coen Brothers movie is the defeat of the American left, and what happens when you have a country where socialism has been crushed, and that's like you see it from the very beginning of their films with the very opening of Blood Simple, where the guy says, I hear in Russia they do it this way, but this is not Russia, this is America, and we see that with Barton Fink, and we see that with Inside Llewyn Davis, where like his vision of folk music doesn't have any of the politics. And so when the union steward asked him, are you a Shachtmanite? Which is a variety of Trotskyism, like Llewyn, it flies past Llewyn. So this is very much a recurring story that the Coens are very interested in, which is the crushing of the left. And then also, the screenwriters are very interesting because they're schlubby, and
the little sandwiches, the little tea sandwiches. Oh, amazing.
There's a case that the actual Hollywood leftists in the 30s, and 40s, their ideas of propaganda was like you'd have a film and somebody would say, down with the Cossacks in the background. So that was not. But the screenwriters also, I think, as with Barton Fink, their point of entry or their point of sympathy. Because the Coen Brothers are filmmakers, but what are they in their day job? How do they make money to keep their lifestyle going? Like they write scripts for Spielberg and for what's the other script that they wrote for? It was for a famous actress, Angelina Jolie. They wrote a script for her. So they are themselves script writers, right? That's like their kind of thing. And as anyone knows, in the hierarchy of Hollywood, the script writer is the low person on the totem pole. And I think that there's a kind of sympathy for the scriptwriters, or it's interesting that the scriptwriters are shown as the proletarians of the system.
I tend to like, especially when that scene kind of opens up and you get a chance to see everyone who's a part of the sort of schlubbier crew of screenwriters. It's really like a who's who of, it's that guy.
Fisher Stevens, there's
Fred Malamed and Patrick Fischler and all these different guys. And so I was always just kind of taken by like all these guys who don't even really have speaking parts. I don't think Fred Malamed even says anything in the movie, which is incredible.
I think you're right.
David Krumholtz.
Exactly.
Character actors in many of their movies, you have these like background character actors who don't necessarily say anything, but whose faces are so expressive and are so like filled with life. But no, it's exactly. But I think that but also I do think the film takes Marxism very seriously as an alternative, because there are four alternatives. You can have religion, you can have communism, you can have capitalism in the form of Lockheed, and you can have Hollywood art. So those are like the four choices that are available to people, and I think that's a pretty fair judgment of life.
I just kind of wonder if it's a binary, though. Like, I mean, we get back to this idea that there are like lessons of Christ that are sort of aligned with Marxism to a degree. Like if you read like Galatians or Corinthians, bear one another's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ, like there are particular verses that I do think like can align with socialism to a degree. That I just sort of wonder if maybe they're making a statement around the partnership between the two, and that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the other message. That is, I mean, there's a whole idea of duality, but then there's also, as the rabbi says, or one of the priests says, there's a unity within duality. Things that are divided that are actually the same. Christ is both God and man, so you can be both a Marxist and a Christian. That's very much the case. I mean, it's interesting because Channing Tatum, like he's the swell figure from the East. Christ is described as a swell figure from the East, and Tatum is the swell figure from the Eastern Bloc. He had the star, just as there was a star, the communist star, just as there was a star guiding towards Jesus, and he has 12 disciples. How many are there in that communist cell? I think there's 12 or 13, but anyways. But the parallels, there's a lot of biblical parallels, but that's also with the Scarlett Johansson character, because she gives birth, but there's no father, and there's a non-entity, person, who's the father. So Scarlett Johansson is the Blessed Virgin Mary.
I'd love to see that, actually. That'd be a great film. Or play Mary like that.
Well, I find the set pieces in this film so delicious, and when Channing Tatum, Bert Gurney, musical star Bert Gurney, does jump onto the submarine. We see the captain standing there. Now that's actually Dolph Lundgren.
Yes,
there's a much longer. There was an actual sequence with them that was cut for time. Now I don't know if it's on the DVD or not, but how I would love to see Dolph Lundgren
for sure
and Bert Gurney talking on that submarine. So
what I thought was another cool little moment was when Mannix had all the religious leaders in the room. They're all giving their ideas.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was the rabbi at the end said something like, "You guys are crazy," or something like that. Where he's just like leaving a comment on all the religions. Yeah.
But to me, the best moment in the scene with the religious leaders, where they take it to a rabbi, a padre, a priest, and an Eastern Orthodox priest, and ask them what they think of the script. And they say, "Well, what do you think?" And then the Eastern Orthodox priest says, "Well, I didn't like the chariot race. It's just not realistic."
He's like,
everybody's got a note.
I was particularly blown away by the, and this kind of bowled me over. Like they're very critical until someone mentions, but it'd be played by Baird Whitlock, and suddenly, he's a very serious actor. Everyone's completely won over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You know what I thought of as well is like watching the movies within a movie, the old Hollywood skewering homage to old Hollywood was. I thought of Hollywood Shuffle, one of my favorite films. Robert Townsend film.
Oh, I have not seen that.
It's an amazing film. It's more so it definitely skewers Hollywood, but about the Black experience in Hollywood, how they couldn't get work. But there's all these little vignettes within the movies within movies, little scenes like that. And I felt like that's a better skewering of Hollywood than this. But if you haven't, go see it. It still holds up. It's really, really funny. Obviously, like the whole crew's in there. The Wayans brothers are in there. Keenan and Damon, and David Alan Grier, the whole crew. It's really, really funny. But it does do this whole little like thing about like obviously how the struggle of a Black actor in Hollywood, but so funny, like making fun of like. Different sort of scenes like that. But yeah, this is sort of what made me think of this as well. Like, that's sort of. I wonder if they saw Hollywood Shuffle. Like I know the Coen Brothers are not saw it, but yeah. Yeah,
well, we have some chat comments, and there's some pretty interesting. People did want to talk about the take on Marxism and Catholicism and comparisons. Pasolini's Gospel of Matthew was 100% a socialist film. This is one of our listeners. And so here's one. We mentioned Hobie a minute ago. Hobie, and Stephanie says, Hobie is happily married to Carlotta, and you can't tell me otherwise.
I agree. They hit it off well.
Now let's talk about Hobie in this movie, played by Alden Ehrenreich. And
great.
And he is like, I mean, you fall in love with him so much in this movie. So Hobie is like part of what Jeet wrote about the duality of the film. On screen, he plays this, cowboy who sings and jumps over horses and everything. And then we think he's a total bumpkin at this. By the way, can anyone give us a mirthless chuckle? We
yes,
see Hobie.
I'm trained.
I can do Hobie's version of a mirthless chuckle.
But so we see Hobie terrorized by director Lawrence Lorenz as he's trying to get him to be who is, I guess it's kind of Douglas Sirk maybe, and he's trying to, his mannered film, and Hobie is completely flummoxed by trying to say a line, would that it were so, and then what that it was so. And then we see him, we think he's a total bumpkin, and then in a scene with Eddie, we learn Hobie's got it going on. Yeah, he is smart. He is caring. We see him with Carlotta, this other ingenue, in a arranged date, and he's doing rope tricks and charming her. So I just love the character. And, I said really, like, when they said who was going to play Han Solo, and it was like Ansel Elgort or Alden Ehrenreich, and I said, let's go Ehrenreich, because I loved him in this movie so much. And, like, Solo killed his career.
Hey, I love Solo. I know people.
I love Solo too.
I thought it was
actually,
great,
I'm coming around to Solo. Yeah.
Kyle seems to have a different opinion.
I rarely hear people say they love Solo. It's they kind of bloat that.
Well, it's work, but I think Solo grows. I think Solo, once you get past the hype and the horror of the whole idea, and I think he's really
great in it.
He's so charming in it, and he's obviously now. What's really interesting to me though is that there was all these rumors that he had to go to a dialogue coach and had to be, heavily coached into how to say his lines in Solo, which is a real life parallel of everything that happened to him in Hail Caesar. That's so much that I'm wondering, did it really happen? Or is it just people were projecting? But yeah, whatever happened to Alden Ehrenreich? Should he come back?
Well, I mean, he's on that Grant Morrison sort of run Brave New World show that I don't think anyone watches.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on Peacock.
Oh,
if anyone watches that,
that's why.
Yeah. It was gonna be on USA at one point, and then it got moved over to another network, and finally Peacock.
Even a show that Jimmy hasn't seen.
Yeah, well, Peacock, it's like the one streaming service I don't have, so yeah. But
yeah. But I mean, I know he was in a lot of indie film. I mean, he was actually on the rising young star. Yeah. He's until he made
He's
Solo.
Good. I hope he gets more work, because he should. They shouldn't that film shouldn't ruin his career. My God, but yeah.
Yeah, I just watching this again and just seeing how good he is and how funny he is and how charming he is. I'm just like, yeah, I really hope Solo didn't destroy his career forever, because he obviously has a lot of talent.
I feel like the Lawrence Lorenz scene is sort of like, even for people who don't like the movie so much, is sort of the like, that is the gold standard scene of the whole movie. Like, Hannah and I were watching this thing again, and like, she was like, "This is my favorite scene in the film, without doubt." And it's incredible. Like, Ray Fiennes is just, he's one of our finest working actors by far, and he's so committed to that role. And I just love the switch between Lawrence, please. You just said Lawrence. It's just I love that back.
Oh no,
and forth.
come! We're on a first name basis now.
Christian names.
I mean, this movie, obviously the Coen Brothers movies have a lot of, jokes to them, but I mean, the fact that it uses the word importune and sucker in dialogue, and it works. This is now Portia will importune you to the sofa, and Hobie's like, well, she's gonna importune me. Is that okay?
It's great, and that's Emily Beecham on the sofa, who I love. She's great. She's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think all the Coen Brothers movies are just, very, very complicated. I originally wanted to do this film on Comic Beat Insider because I was hoping to get Todd Alcott on, who is a screenwriter himself. Has written actually for the Beat. He's does analysis of movies is some of the best, but he wasn't he was not able to do it. But he did send me a comment to read, so I'll read
Oh,
Todd's, and he's actually written, he put together a collection of his Coen Brothers analysis, which is really amazing. You can get it on Amazon. Um, so let's see. It is from a Marxist standpoint. The Coen Brothers movies always have a character in them who represents capital, the one who controls all the action, the one who calls the shots and to whom everyone answers. In most of their movies, that character is the antagonist. But in two, True Grit and Hail Caesar, the protagonist is actually the capital character, which I find interesting since both of these movies were made after they won the Academy Award, as though their natural inclination to side with the little guy has shifted since they've gained worldwide success and recognition. In case anyone misses the point, the name of the studio in Hail Caesars is named Capitol Pictures.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, interesting. Very nice.
Like Eddie Mannix is not capital; he's an employee. The actual capital is unseen, and that goes along with this sort of theological theme. Because at the end of the movie, in the credits, it says no divine entity has been depicted in the making of this movie, and it's significant that the owner, the actual capital in the real sense, is like the voice of God. He's not seen. So I think that there's perhaps has something significant there as well,
Yeah, what's
theologically.
his Skank is his name or something
yeah,
like that?
yeah, Mr. Skank, the mysterious
Also based on a real person though, right? Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah.
that's it,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so Eddie, I mean, it's interesting about Eddie Mannix. He's the man behind the desk. And usually that's an unsympathetic character, like in Llewyn Davis. But I don't know. I mean, I think that the movie is a sort of affirmation of the value of film and of art, and so therefore that sort of producer figure or fixer figure, like becomes good in a way that he previously wasn't in Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah.
This
Just
movie
for
also.
anybody watching, while many movies move me to tears, this wasn't one of them. I'm just having an issue. I've been having an issue with my eyelid. I have a corneal abrasion, so it's sort of tearing up. That's why I'm doing this. I'm like,
No, you're
oh, Hell
just sad.
Caesar! I love Hell Caesar so much.
You're just that last monologue that
Yeah.
Baird Whitlock
Yes.
gives
It's still,
about
it gets
the
me every
Christ,
time.
the
Just worry about
Christ.
Hobie. I hope he's okay.
It is the only Coen Brothers movie that has the Highlander in it. And
Yes.
so,
Yes,
suddenly,
it does.
suddenly it makes me think maybe it is the greatest Coen Brothers movie for that alone.
I mean, it does have. I mean, the cameos in this film are just stunning. I mean, like I said, we lost. The Dolph Lundgren section, but we get the Highlander as the Swedish director, and Clancy Brown. He's in so many of the movies that we talk
Clancy
about
Brown's so
on
great.
Comic Beat Insider, playing a Roman centurion. So yeah. Well, I don't think we've solved the. I don't think we've solved the Hail Caesar conundrum. I think, like many Coen Brothers movies, they're all so great that people will continue to debate what they mean and where they rank. But Jimmy, you did do your
Yes.
customary remake.
So for Jeet and Kyle, anybody out there listening right now, every week we do, if we do a movie, I recast it and remake. And being someone of Asian background, Filipino background, and dealing with all white casts all the time, and being the token Asian or token ethnic in a group, I like to recast it ethnically, usually mostly Asian. So, and I understand the idea is all Hollywood, it's all white, but let's just pretend that at the time Hollywood was more open, or maybe we're just going to Hamilton this one. All right. So if there was they decide to remake it today, this is how I would do it. So we would have as Eddie Mannix, Song Kang-ho, who of course was in the lead of the great Parasite film recently, and a great Korean actor, award-winning Korean actor, fantastic actor. Yeah, he'd see him as Eddie Mannix. If you haven't seen the Drug King movie he's done Netflix, he's fantastic. In the George Clooney role, Baird Whitlock, Ken Watanabe. Come on now, suave and smooth Ken Watanabe. He's the best.
Sure.
Alden's character, Hobie Doyle. My little Filipino brother, Bruno Mars. Come on. He can sing. He's charming. Come on. I think he'd put a little fun to it. And Ray Fiennes, Lorentz character, Daniel Day Kim. We all know is a fantastic actor. As Deanna Moran, the Scarlett Johansson character, Jamie Chung, who just turned out a fantastic performance in Lovecraft Country. If you haven't seen the recent episode, my God, she's incredible in that. And Tilda Swinton playing both Thora and Thessaly Thacker. Ming Na Wen, of course, a fantastic
Oh,
Ming Na
good
Wen,
one.
who's
Good one.
good in everything she does. In Channing Tatum, I know this is a tough one with Burt Gurney, but Harry Shum Jr., we of course know him from Glee. He can sing and dance, do all that stuff, and he's gone on to do many things, Crazy Rich Asians and everything. So I think he'd be a nice little soft shoe man. And finally, let's bring the director in. Let's get that Parasite, and director Bong Joon-ho would direct the whole thing. I think it'd be great because he's done so many different genres as well. So yeah,
I would love to see a Bong Joon-ho take on Hollywood.
Yes.
I think that movie
Exactly.
would be amazing.
Yes. So that is my remake.
Yeah. So yeah. If we have so many great comments on this.
I'll play the bartender in the dance scene.
Oh, you should, right? It is.
Get off my tables! Come on, and maybe join them because I can tap. Maybe join them in the tap too.
Here's an interesting character. It's a well-known phenomenon that actors who play bad actors can struggle to get work afterwards. Meg Tilly complained her role in Bullets Over Broadway as a terrible actress meant she struggled afterwards. So
really,
yeah.
It's acting. It's like, oh, that drives me
I
fucking
know.
crazy. When people do, they're like, oh, but they're like their person. Like, certainly sometimes they are, but it's like, it's called acting, It's like, Jesus Christ. Stupid.
Well, what's weird is, like, while we were watching it, I had the realization that we haven't seen Channing Tatum in anything in years. Like, I don't know if it was like the Gambit thing that messed him up with the the Fox sale to Marvel, but he's been off the screen forever. And I saw they just finally announced he's got a new movie coming out that he's co-directing.
That's true. He has been aside from, Magic Mike and, that movie, what is the movie he did? Not Olympus, White House Down. No, we should.
He was in
I love that.
Circle,
he was, yes, but he was in it briefly. He was like, his role kind of got recast halfway through. So a good call, Kyle. There's Channing Tatum. But he, anytime you see people dancing in a movie, I mean, I've seen the Magic Mike films multiple times. I love watching it very closely because the dancing is so excellent in the films. And so anytime, Channing Tatum is out there dancing, I really enjoy it. He's a very good dancer. And it's a lot of
he's a very talented guy for sure.
Yeah, he's just very talented. It's a lot of fun to see him on screen. So sorry about the Gambit thing, dude. There can be only one Ryan Reynolds, I think. So what do we know about Macbeth though? I haven't been up on this.
It's the first time that there's only one Coen. It's only Joel, which is new.
It's apparently finished shooting, right?
Yeah, it's finished shooting. Yeah. Denzel Washington as Macbeth, Francis McDormand as Lady Macbeth. Written by William Shakespeare and Joel Coen.
with additional dialogue by William Shakespeare in the famous
Jeet, do we know if it's going to be in Shakespearean verse or have they updated it to?
I don't know if we know that. I mean, it does say it's based on Shakespeare, but Joel Coen has written the script. So
okay, wow.
Yeah, I'm very interested because, like I said, that was it's still one of my favorite Shakespearean, and I did the play back in my younger days as well. I'm a big Shakespeare nerd, so I'm very open, but I'm also just cautiously optimistic as well. Because I'm like, I'm all for like remakes and as you heard, and all for remakes and reinterpretations, setting it in different time periods. I love doing. I've done Shakespeare productions where he's set in different time periods or different ethnicities, or like that. But this is a sacred text for me, Shakespeare. So I'll be watching this with a very, very open eye for sure. Yeah.
So what is everybody's least favorite Coen brother movie?
No, again, I'm so far behind.
The Lady Killers, definitely. It's the only one I don't like.
Yeah, I'm with Jeet. Lady Killers or Intolerable Cruelty. That twofer is
I'm right there with you. So I guess if you play the Sugar Plum game of the three best movies, it's infinite. But if you pick their worst movie, there can be only one.
I would have to defend Intolerable Cruelty, which I think is a really excellent in the sort of screwball comedy mode of the. But yeah, Lady Killers is too much for me.
Yeah, it just
I've never seen it, but I'll agree.
It's
because the worst ever.
Sometimes they do there is, I don't want to say there's mockery. I was going to say, is it mean-spirited or mockery? There's absolutely mockery, usually mixed with tenderness, but for some reason, the Lady Killers, the tenderness was out the window, and it was unpleasant. It was just an unpleasant film. And of course, a remake of the original, which is so good, Alec Guinness.
Their mom died about like a year before the movie made. So the American explanation is that they were not in a good headspace when they were making.
Yeah,
Heidi, I will say that there may be infinite worst Coen Brothers movies as well. If you ask my mother, what's the worst Coen Brothers movie? As we were leaving No Country for Old Men, I will never forget. After the last scene, my mother just turned to me and said, "That was stupid." So there may be more answers than you think.
All right. Well, nice. The panel will always remain open. It is, like I said, a lively discussion.
I am impressed by this Macbeth cast, though. Besides Denzel and Fred, we got Brendan Gleeson as Duncan, Corey Hawkins as Macduff. That's great. My God, really good cast here. Sean Patrick Thomas as Monteith. Excellent. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I hope they bring it out.
It's going to be good. We'll be watching it for sure.
For sure, yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps up yet another episode of Comic Beat Insider. So, Kyle and Jeet, where can we find you online?
You can find me at The Beat sometimes, and you can also find me at screenrex.com, where most of my reviews are posted.
And on social media?
Oh, yeah, at Kyle Pinion, Pinion.
I'm on Twitter at my name, but reversed, Heer Jeet, and I'm a national correspondent for The Nation, so you can usually find me there, among other places.
And of course, I'm Jimmy Aquino with Comic News Insider, the weekly podcast since 2005, covering comics, TV, film, pop culture, all sorts of stuff, interviews, news, reviews, etc. We've been doing about 2 or 3 podcasts a week lately, just because lockdown, even though I'm back to work. But got a lot of interviews lined up. I'm interviewing my friend Penelope Bajou tomorrow.
Oof, nice.
And you can find us at comicnewsinsider.com, or just want to find me. I'm all over the socials at Jimmy Aquino, JimmyAquino.
And I am a Heidi McDonald of The Beat at comicsbeat.com. And you can find me on all social media at ComicsAce, COMIXACE. So until next time, thank you for watching. We had a lot of people watching this one, so I guess people were interested
to hear. For joining.
Jeet and Kyle, thank you so much. I'm
awesome.
really glad that you guys could come on and really do a deep dive on this movie. So
look what real journalists can say. I'm just like, I liked it.
I know, me cool. Too. I'm like, I like.
This part was all right.
I liked it when he had the tiny sandwiches. That's what I liked. So that's for me.
I did too. They were nice sandwiches.
All the marks.
That Tappan was dope as fuck. Whatever, man. It's cool.
Yeah. So definitely doing it. Well, until next time, would that it were so.
Yes.
We'll see you next time on Comic Beat Insider.
Bye.
Bye. I always have to struggle. I struggle to